Hey everyone, Mr. Macintosh here, and today was a very important day for Apple because iOS 16 was released to the public. But that's not all, because Apple also released Monterey 12.6, Big Sur 11.7, Safari 16, and they also did not release an associated security update for Catalina, so it's no longer supported. Plus, we're going to talk about OpenCore Legacy Patcher for your unsupported Macs. We got a lot to cover. Let's jump in and get started. Let's first go over the Apple OS release list for the iOS 16 launch day. On the macOS side, we got Big Sur 11.7. Catalina did not get an associated security update, so it's most likely no longer supported by Apple, and we're going to go over that later. Xcode got a launch day 14.0 and an associated command line tools 14.0. Configurator is the same version, and so is the Apple Studio Display firmware update. On the iOS side, we got iOS 16 launch day, and we also got a 15.7 security update, so you can still stay on 15 and get that security update, but we don't know how long that's going to last. Maybe a few weeks or maybe a month or two. We'll have to see. iPadOS also got 15.7, and the 16.0 version is going to be released in the October along with Ventura. tvOS got 16.0 release, HomePodOS 16.0, and watchOS 9.0. Our demonstration Mac today is a 2020 M1 13-inch MacBook Pro. Let's first take a look at what the update looked like in Software Update System Preferences. To update, all you need to do is hit System Preferences, click on Software Update, and you should see the 12.6 update in here. If you don't, click on Advanced and click OK again, and it should refresh, and you should see 12.6. When you do, this is what it should look like. Once you see this, you can click More Information, and you can see all the updates listed, and you're going to see something really different right off the bat. First of all, if you have Xcode installed, you're going to see those command line tools that we talked about. You're going to see a Safari update in there. And what happens is that during this time in the fall, at the very end, when all the new OSs come out, the previous operating system, which is going to be Monterey now, once Ventura comes out, Safari now is included as a separate update. And we're going to talk about that later, but this is what's going to look like. So you don't need to just install them one at a time. You can actually click install now, and Apple will go through each one and install them first, then finally install 12.6, prepare it, and then reboot you. So that's what it looks like for the new 12.6 update. For the size, this was 1.59 gigabytes in size, and that's going to be the smallest one because this Mac is coming from 11.5.1. It's going to be a little bit larger the farther you go back. So if you're on 12.3, it might be 2 or 2.5 gigabytes, and that's how that works because it includes every other security update and fix all the way back to 12.3. How long did it take to install the Monterey 12.6 update? Well, I always keep track of how long it takes to do at least the two parts of it. First, it has to download, but that always depends on your download speed. The second part is to prepare the update. Once the preparing done, it has to actually install the update after the reboot, and then it's on a usable desktop. So for the preparing time, took only about 8 minutes. Then it rebooted to do the installation time. That part took 17 minutes, and we finally got to a usable desktop in 25 minutes total. I marked these down so you at least have a baseline of what to look for when you're installing your OS update. After you get on 12.6, let's take a look at the build version number. The build version for 12.6 is 21G115, and I only go over that because just in case you installed a previous beta release and you thought you're maybe on like an RC1 or RC2 or something like that, and you would know that you would have to get another update to be able to get to this current build version. But with this release, Apple did not have any beta releases for us to be able to test 12.6. They just said, this is the version we're going to go with. Give it a little bit of test. If you find any problems, let us know. But if not, we're going with 12.6, and that's what we got today. Another thing I keep track of is the size of the macOS system, and that can change between OS update releases. On 12.5.1, the macOS system was at 15.42 gigabytes. After installing 12.6, we can see that we are now at 15.4.1, so we lost a little bit of space, 1 megabyte or so, and that's not that big of a change. But I also keep track because look what's different here. This keeps track, the red part here is apps, and for some reason on 12.6, it includes it as system data. So check yours and let me know, do you see the app section in red on yours, or is it disappeared on 12.6? Well, that's another reason why I keep track of this, because who knows or who knew this was going to be missing on my particular installation. I also keep track of firmware updates, and for M1, M2, Apple did not include a firmware update in the 12.6 update. And if you look here at my list, Apple didn't even do a firmware update for 12.5.1. The last time they did it was on 12.5, so that's why I keep track, so you know what's going on in the background. Now, if you have an Intel T2 Mac from 2018 to 2020, your BridgeOS update firmware was updated to 16.067. Apple did release a full installer for 12.6, so you can create a USB installer or an upgrade for a download. The IPSW for M1, M2 Macs was released, plus Apple did not fix the dual 12.5.1 full installer in the software update catalog. So that's kind of weird that that's still there, but it is what it is. Now let's talk about the macOS Monterey 12.6 update patch notes. What we're going to see here now that Ventura is almost ready for launch is that macOS Monterey is going to be now the second operating system, and it's going to turn into what we would like to call a security update mode. And that means that Apple really isn't going to provide any new enhancements or features to the operating system anymore, and only provide security updates to keep the operating system secure. And you're going to see that in the patch notes here. It's going to be very simple. This update provides important security updates and is recommended for all users. There's only one or two other things that they're going to put in these type notes that you might know that there's something else other than security updates. And it's going to be right here. So for 12.5, it says that there's bug fixes and security updates, but there could also be enhancements, but we're probably not going to see enhancements anymore, only if there's a bug fixes or security updates. Now, I wish Apple was a little bit more transparent here, so if they did fix something, they would still put it in here, but they might consider it so small that they don't really even cover it. So when we see this, then we know that all we can really do is go to the security update page. So we can click on this here, and it's going to show us what's actually in the update. So we can go down to the macOS Monterey 12.6, and we can see all the security fixes in 12.6. And what we want to do here is we want to look for major ones that have been maybe already active in the wild. So we scroll down, we can take a look at some of these that are fixed here, and we could see one of these that are major here. Apple is aware of the report that this issue may have been actively exploited, and it was an application that may be able to execute arbitrary code with kernel privileges. Now, this is the same type of an issue that we had back in the 12.5.1 update to be able to be a major security update. One other thing I wanted to mention is that unfortunately Apple does not treat the previous two operating systems now, which once Ventura comes out will be Big Sur and Monterey, the same as they do with the mainline operating system. And this is evident right here in the 12.5.1 update. Remember how I said that Apple did not patch CVE 2022-32.894 in macOS Big Sur. Well, if we go back to the security update page here and we click on the 11.7 update, look what we find in here. Look at this. It was patched, but the problem is that Apple did not release an associated Big Sur security update when they released 12.5.1. So this means that this issue was in Big Sur for over 26 days being actively exploited until they released 11.7 to patch the issue. So it's a perfect example of saying, if you want to have the absolute most secure system, make sure you're on the newest, latest operating system. Today, that's Monterey, but in October, that will be Ventura. Safari 16 was also released today, and as I mentioned earlier, it is now going to be a separate download. Safari 16 comes with a bunch of new features and also big security updates, and is available for Monterey and macOS Big Sur. So when we look at that software update window, like I mentioned earlier, you will see it as a separate download, and I do recommend installing that, as it does include important security fixes to be able to keep your Mac safe. I would not recommend skipping that. I would recommend just keeping that selected and installing that when it starts to come down. Once macOS Ventura comes out, Safari will be included inside the software update for Ventura, just like it used to be for macOS Monterey. Now let's take a look at some benchmarks for the 12.6 update. Just so you know, when I run the benchmarks, I always add them to my account so you can look at them if you wanted to take a peek. I run them on right before I install the update, and then after the update's complete, I do not run the benchmark until I let Spotlight do all of its indexing and the machine is now fully at a idle state. So before the update on 12.5.1 here, we had a 1754 single and a 7760 multi-core. And then after installing the 12.6 update, we had a single core 1741, very close, and a 7719, so right spot on. And again, when we run the Geekbench scores, we're looking for any kind of a large swing in either the single or the multi-core, maybe showing that something wrong, or maybe that there's an improvement to the operating system. But like I mentioned, since we're getting to the later stages of the Monterey updates, we shouldn't see too much of deviation between the scores after an update. Now let's talk about OpenCore Legacy Patcher for Unsupported Macs and the Monterey 12.6 update. As of this taping, we are still on 0.4.10. And I checked the Discord and I have not seen any issues so far with the 12.6 update, but I always make sure that I pick one unit to be able to install it on, so it at least gives us a baseline of the installation working. And a good one to pick is our good old 11,3 late 2013, mid 2014 MacBook Pro, because that's the one that's had issues in the past. As you can see here, we've made it to 12.6 and we are fully working on 0.4.10. To update, all you need to do is open up Software Update, click Update, the system will install the update, and then when it comes back up, you should see a pop-up right here that says, hey, we've noticed that your Mac does not have any patches. Click on OK, and it'll install those post-root volume patches for you automatically. And if not, you don't see a pop-up, that's okay. Just open up the app right here and click on post-root patch here, and then you'll be all set to go. There really shouldn't be any issues with this update, and if there is, I'll make sure that I put an update down in the description of this video, or an update will be posted on the OpenCore Legacy Patcher GitHub here. When you click on releases, this is what you always want to check first before you install the update. As you can see that there's no major issues right here, and that's what you would wait on if you saw that there was an issue on your particular unit, but that we're so far okay with macOS Monterey 12.6. A real quick update on Ventura support. I put that video out 2 weeks ago talking about an update on the Ventura support in OpenCore Legacy Patcher, but it's still being worked on. Keep in mind, Ventura is still in beta. We're getting very close to the public release, and let the developers continue to work on the release to get it fixed up. There's some stuff out there about how to get it working on your Mac, but I do not recommend doing that until there's a proper public release of OpenCore Legacy Patcher that is supported on macOS Ventura. The next thing I wanted to talk about was a macOS Ventura release schedule. Now that iOS 16 is released, Apple can focus on iPadOS and Ventura to get them ready to go for launch. We are looking at a October release. When we look down here, Apple did update the page here to say coming this October, so at least we know when. It could be October 31st or it could be October 15th. We don't know for sure yet, but we do have a guesstimate that there's going to be a Mac event with possibly a new Mac Pro, and that would be perfect timing for Apple to say, hey, Ventura is going to be coming on this particular date. So we're going to keep an eye out on that to see when Ventura is going to be released. With the macOS Ventura coming out in October, that brings bad news for the third and trailing operating system, which is macOS Catalina. macOS Catalina did not have an associated security update that came out today. It is most likely no longer supported by Apple. And all we need to really do is look at the previous schedule for Mojave. Apple's last security update was 2021-005, and it was released in July. And when we looked at macOS Catalina, the same thing happened. The 2022-005 was also released in July, and we do not have an associated security update that was released alongside today. If Apple was going to do it, why didn't they release it with Big Sur and Monterey today? It would have been perfect timing, and this is probably the final nail in the coffin for Catalina. Now, what does that mean for you? If you're on Catalina, my recommendation for you is to make the jump to at least Big Sur or Monterey right now, because you haven't had any security updates since July. And if the operating system is working for you, that's great. But again, you are not vulnerable to all those exploits that I mentioned in the security update release page. So again, my recommendation is to make that jump. And finally, there comes the recommendation. Do I recommend you updating to 12.6? Yes, I do. I always recommend giving it a little time, giving the operating system a day, 2, maybe even 3 days, just to make sure there's no major issues. That's why I install it on my system. I install it on a OpenCore Legacy Patcher Unsupported Mac before you install, so at least you get a baseline showing that the operating system works on at least my test units. But that's not to say that something could happen in a day or two and you could wait just a little bit just to see if there's more major issues. But after that, I do recommend you updating because it includes some very important security updates. But I'm not going to say that every single time, because sometimes it's maybe like a bug fix just for a certain application that you don't even have. So you don't really need to install that update. But in this case, it does include these fixes that I really recommend you having for your Mac. Thanks for watching this video. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments below. I can give you a hand. If you like this video, you can give it a thumbs up or a share. I'd really appreciate that. And as always, I really appreciate all my viewers and especially my Patreon members. You guys are absolutely fantastic. We'll catch you in the next video. Thanks.